Welcome back to American Beef Ranch. Today it's a brisk and chilly morning, but we're taking the Polaris General 1000 and we're headed out to do a little work on a pivot because we got to get it started this morning. Okay, we just took a look at this pivot right here and we stopped and we made sure that it's moving. The reason that we make sure it's moving because if it's not moving, it's not operating as we have it set up. We have it set up in a specific way so that it waters a certain amount of water over a certain period of time. Now this pivot is about right on track for where it should be for a 3-day rotation. And so I had it set up for exactly 3 days rotation, but I'm gonna let it go a little farther. I'm probably gonna let it go 4 days. The reason being is because I wanna get it, last time that we ran it, it got a flat tire and it stopped early before its full rotation. So it missed about a quarter of the pivot in water, and we still haven't caught that up. So I think we're gonna go ahead and catch that up because this pivot waters the most acres that we have, and it's important to keep it on track, and it's important to keep these acres watered because these ones are the ones that are easiest to be lost if we don't water them like we should, because it's more acres in a pivot. So sometimes you're not putting out the same amount of water, it takes more time, things like that. So it's really important that we keep this pivot operating as we're supposed to. Looks like most of the sprinklers are unplugged, which is perfect. Now that this pivot's good, I know it's good, we're gonna go ahead and run to another pivot that we've got to do some work on to make sure that it doesn't cause us any trouble down the road. Okay, if you haven't figured out, irrigation is very important to us here, and it's important to keep it up to date and keep it working correctly. So I noticed when I was building this in boom here that I had some U-joints that were not up to snuff, and that they may not cause me problems even this season, but they will cause me problems at some point. So if you look, each pivot tower, what we call this thing, has a center drive. This center drive is an electric motor with a gearbox. That gearbox turns drive shafts, and there's U-joints on those drive shafts, and it goes to a gearbox over there, turns the tire really slowly, you know, mechanical advantage and stuff. Anyway, you can see this rubber disc, it's wearing out. That's not good. Same thing over here, rubber disc, a lot of play, wearing out. These bolts are thinning out in there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but they're wearing. Anyway, it may not cause us problems right now, but it's going to cause us problems. So what we do is we replace it with one of these. This is a universal U-joint. The reason that I like these is because they have bigger bolts and there's no rubber disc to cause problems. This hard poly, you know, like block shock absorber works a lot better and lasts a lot longer than the other U-joints. So basically what I'm going to do is gather some tools and we're going to work on, excuse me, getting those U-joints changed. Come back to the Polaris General 1000, which is a total disaster because one of my bags fell over, and so yeah, that's not good. Anyway, I'm gonna find what I need in this mess, and then we're gonna change some U-joints. Okay, so I got all my tools, basic hand tools, and then it's really nice to have a compact impact gun like this Milwaukee 3/8 compact impact gun. Link in the description as always. I mean, if you're working on this kind of stuff for farming in general, having a large impact and a compact one is an awesome thing. You can get the little adapters for the screw impact guns, but I found that this one has a lot more power, and I don't do a lot of carpentry work for several reasons. And so I found that for me, the 3/8 compact impact gun is a better fit. So it's typical SAE stuff here. And this one's pretty simple to undo. You just loosen these guys and it'll come out now. There you go. So now that'll come out when we decide to slide this off. And so now we've got to unbolt this. This one here is always the most difficult. It's not the most difficult to unbolt, it's the most difficult to get the bolt out of this shaft here, because this is a solid shaft and this bolt goes in there, and then there's water falling on it all the time. So obviously, you can imagine a lot of rust. So, good thing to have a hammer and some kind of punch. Because maybe some penetrant lubricant, which I don't have with me. Okay. Come on. We'll get that out in a minute. All right, there we go. It's usually a tough job to get that off. The next toughest job is to get this off this shaft. And a grinder, hammer, pry bar, it don't matter. It's hard to get off typically. You know, if I was really smart, I would take some Never Seas and put on there. But I'm not that smart. Hopefully it just doesn't go bad again. Until, you know, center drive or something goes out. See if we can get that off. Ah, there we go. So guys, all right, so these are, tip you up a little, these are really awesome. You've obviously got the shaft part, and then you've got the clamp part for the drive shaft. The reason I like these is they're universal. So there's two different sizes of drive shafts. They both work. We have big nuts and bolts, so they're easy to work with. Some of the older style U-joints had little 7/16 nuts on a little, what would that make it? 5/16 bolt. So anyway, they broke all the time. And these ones typically, we don't have problems with them breaking, which is so nice. This, you don't, they have square lugs that lock in, so you don't need a wrench or anything to get them off. I may have to get my grinder and clean this up. Okay, so I'm just gonna take my Milwaukee grinder and clean up. See if that's any better. I didn't grind any, so it's probably, I mean, it's not gonna be super much better. It also doesn't help that everything is so freaking cold. Oh, well, that worked well. So, come on. Tap her home. That looks like that's where it's going to sit. I don't know if we can get to go back any. And it's going to meet the clamp. We can actually slide that out and make it even better, but it looks like it's going to work just right. So we will get these other two bolts popped out. It's nice right now when there's not very much crop growed up yet, because it's so cold and early in the spring. This becomes a lot more difficult after the ground's been watered for, and I've got to remember, yeah, so it's on the point on this one. There. Alright. Just like that, we're good and solid. That should be good to go for a while. Now, just sit back, relax, and watch me tackle this one. This one, you notice, doesn't have a clamp here. So I think I'm gonna have to unbolt it, slide it out of the way, slide it off, and then get this piece off. It's gonna be a little bit of a process, but no matter, we'll get it done. So I ran into a very, very common problem I have when I switch to these universal U-joints. But luckily on this one, I'm not gonna have to do any modifications. So typically, these drive shafts are cut for a certain length, and as you can see, the way this one sits, it's not gonna be able to slide into this groove here and be where it needs to be. But luckily for us, on this other end, we have these slip joint type, and this one's really solid, so I'm not gonna change it out because there's no reason to right now. I mean, this rubber is really solid, it's in good shape. It's a perfectly serviceable drive shaft, but what I'm gonna do is I think I can slide this back enough to this point here so that I don't have to cut this drive shaft off. Typically, we'd have to take a grinder with a cutoff wheel or the Sawzall, zip off the end of that drive shaft. But today, I think we're not gonna have to do that, which is awesome. We're coming along. So let me see if I can get this fixed up. So, like I said, we're just gonna loosen. I didn't want to take it off, darn it. But no matter. Alright, so it's pretty tight. I may have to loosen up the other ones. I may have to just take it off. I don't know. Well, that's why. Where's the hammer? It's not popping up. Oh, yeah. Let's see if I can. Perfect. So we slid her back. It's gonna work. Tighten these bolts up. Oh, that's the... You gotta be careful because this thing is strong enough to break bolts. We just want to make sure we're tight. So we're getting tight there. Get it popped apart here and get it put on. All right, U-joints are all fixed up. Now we are, like I said, walking out because we're gonna start this pivot this morning. Sun's fixing to come out, starting to come out. It's gonna get some photosynthesis going. We're gonna get some plant growth. This is a nice orchard grass alfalfa mix. Some spots are heavier than alfalfa, some's got more grass. Just kind of depends on what was here. Unfortunately, the growth here looks good, but I know the organic matter is weak, so we may see that hurt us later in the growing season. But we do have a lot of things coming. We have a lot of projects I'm working on. We'll talk about those soon. And hopefully we have some new financial partners that we're gonna be able to do some expansion and some growth and some really cool things. But what that allows us to do is really hit this hard, like with some fertilizer, first off, organic fertilizer that I sell, that's good stuff. But also I think we're gonna try some biologicals. I think there's a lot of biological stuff in the industry that, you know, I have a 20-acre field here. It's not too expensive per acre to do stuff like that, you know, and we can go ahead and try some things, put some stuff on through the pivot and do some cool stuff like that. So first things first, if this doesn't look familiar to you, you should go back and watch my other videos, because I worked on this pivot quite a bit this year. So I want to go forward and I want to go, so here's my chart for my water, and as you can see, we're right here between these two is where I like to go. So about 25% is where I run it. That's one rotation every 24 hours for the pivot, and it's going to put on between 1/2 inch and 0.6 inches of water. So I know that's what, if I wanted to put on 1 inch of water, I'd turn it down to 13.9%. Obviously these are they are suggestions, and I know that 25% is not quite enough to be right on 24 hours, so I turned it up to about 27. So we're, like I said, we're in the 1/2 inch range of water that we're going to put down. We are set up to flow 200 gallons a minute at 45 psi. I think we're going to be a little bit higher than that on the psi, so we'll probably be pumping a little more water. And plus we have the in gun, which is going to suck up about 20 or 30 gallons on its own. So I have that set forward. We have power, so we'll click it. We are moving. I can already tell you I screwed up. You know why? Because I left my side-by-side right where it is, and it's going to get wet. Great, we're going to get wet. And then after that, we turn the valve, and I don't want to turn it full because I want to keep more pressure in my larger pivot, but still that's going to be plenty of water to get this watered like it should. Shut the box, and we start heading back. You can see we got water flowing. I don't know if you guys can see that with the sun, but we'll have water flowing. Most of these birds are unplugged. I don't think there's really any. There may be one plugged bird. I love pivots, if I haven't mentioned. They just make life so much easier. They really do. They do a lot of work for me for what they're expensive to set up, but after that they do a lot of work and they last a long time, so they're really good. Well, let's run down here to the end and on to the next thing. So you can see we got our water pressure. Look how far these streams shoot. Really spread the water out nice. Freaking, they shoot the water 30 feet at least. Got our end boom here covering this extra ground really good, and then we got our in gun doing his thing. Luckily I parked in a spot where I'm getting hit by this last sprinkler, but the in gun is kind of mostly going over the top right now. But we're gonna run in there, and oh, there you can see it, the new U-joints. They're working away. It's gonna get wet for you guys, but look, just working like they should. That's awesome. I don't know why, but I really like watching water squirt out of the pivot. Anyway, guys, on to the next thing.